I was just waiting on the camera to come on. So here I want to touch uh, base on self-defense against a violent or vicious attack in the street. Now, listen, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to get right to it in the most practical way that I possibly can, and that is just get to it. One of the key elements that is required to be able to stand your ground and possibly survive a very vicious or violent attack in the street is to first admit to yourself where you are psychologically and emotionally, where you are in terms of any type of formal training, and where you are in terms of the world in which you and we all live in. Is that fair? Okay, now, if you are honest with yourself, you would know that we live in a very unpleasant world. We may not want to accept it as such, but it is unpleasant from the standpoint that it is a violent world, an increasingly violent world. It is growing more and more every day. Our country, North America, is constantly developing into a place where we're not certain we are safe in, even in the most gated types of communities. We just simply don't know, ladies and gentlemen. We never know where evil lurks or will rear its head. So it behooves each and every one of us to be prepared as best as we possibly can. And we need to get rid of the excuses as to why we don't arm ourselves. Not just physically arm ourselves with a firearm, but physically arm ourselves with some form of training. You don't have to go to a karate class and learn the traditions and customs of karate or some other traditional martial arts for the next 20 years to learn practical self-defense. You don't. You can go to a specifically designed class for self-defense, self-protection. So, remember, there are individuals that's in our society walking amongst us that would have no problem killing you. I said it. They would have no problem taking your life for a few dollars in your pocket or your purse. They would have no problem putting their hands on you, attacking you with a knife, a club, or whatever, if there's something that you have or they think you have that they want. And there are some people, you could say they might be paranoid, schizophrenic, bipolar, or just have anger issues. If you look at them the wrong way, they could potentially put their hands on you just because they're mentally unstable. These people are in our society. There are some people who should be on medication or maybe in the facility being monitored. They're still walking amongst us. And God forbid that we encounter them in a violent situation, but it does happen every day somewhere in America, somewhere in the world. So what are you going to do if you are confronted and facing one of these types of individuals? Right now for this video, this is karate from my desk, by the way. Right now in this video, we're going to dismiss with the gun scenario. And we're going to focus more on someone physically attacking you with their hands. Okay? Now, in an upcoming video, I'm going to show you a physical demonstration against a knife, a club, a gun, and maybe a couple of other very common weapons in the street, such as a bottle and what have you, and tell you what is practical in those situations. But let me tell you this: every situation is different. Even if it's a similar scenario, you can never paint a perfect picture of how a self-defense situation is going to play out in the street. You just can't. Now, when we are in a martial arts school setting or a self-defense setting, that's just a foundation that you build upon. What you should actually be learning are principles and concepts that you use in a self-defense situation. You cannot do a skit, for example. You cannot go through a routine because you don't know and you never know how an assailant is going to attack you in the street. It could be totally off kilter from how you learn in a class. However, there are some basic things or principles that you must know. You must, for example, know distance. If a person is close enough to you for them to touch you, notwithstanding if you're in the grocery store or you're shopping and you're rubbing shoulders, bumping into people, going through the mall and things like that. I'm talking about an actual situation where someone could be assailing you or attacking you, potentially about to attack you. You need to understand or be able to comprehend distance. This should be one of those elements that you practice when you're at home or in a training facility for your self-defense. Another thing would be people's wording, their verbiage, what they're saying to you, how they're saying things to you rather, and the inflection in people's voices, the tone change and so forth. Those could be indicators that someone is about to do harm to you or wants to do harm to you. Another thing would be just the body language in general. Are they fidgety? Are their hands in their pockets? Does it look like they're reaching for something? Do they have a hand behind their back as if they're about to sucker punch you or pull a weapon out? Are they standing around a corner looking at you in a very suspicious manner or staring at you? These could be potential keys and or signals that you should be aware of. Now, if you're walking alone, and I suggest if you go somewhere that you should always have strength in numbers, of course. 2 or more people should be with you when you're walking at night, especially if you're a lady, even if you're a child. I would hope that you would have an adult or several people walking with you for support, okay, and to even possibly deter and or intimidate a would-be attacker. That's one thing you can consider. But if you are alone, if you are by yourself, make certain that you're always being watchful, vigilant, observant of the terrain, watch vehicles. And sometimes if it's at nighttime and you're walking to your home, walk in the street. Don't walk on a dark sidewalk where there are buildings and there are not people out of doors, maybe in the neighborhood that you live in, and especially past a vacant place where it has a lot of walls and a lot of dead spots where you can't see beyond that. Walk in the street where the street light is, where there's some intermittent traffic, so people can see you if something were to happen. And if you are on the sidewalk and there is traffic, go to the street. If you see someone coming at you, especially if you feel like they're about to do harm to you or try to attack you, go into the street. Go into a crowd of people if there are people there. And you say, someone help, someone dial 911. Do you follow what I'm saying? Now, we understand that everyone cannot run, especially if you're a handicapped individual, you have a cane or a walker or some sort of deformity, and it hinders you from being able to run from an assailant or would be assailant. So that's something to consider as well. So if you can't run, maybe you should carry a whistle. Okay? Maybe you should be on the phone when you're walking home sometimes if it's a few blocks, and talking to a friend or relative on the phone, And if you see something that's unusual, you say, I'm on such and such a street, walking down the street, and I see a strange character or individual. Do you see what I'm saying? And then they can possibly call the police and alert them to where you are if something were to happen and you don't have access to the phone. Okay? But now, let's get right to the attack. When you are in your self-defense training or class, you must learn how to control your fear. You don't want to have the mindset that when something does happen, God forbid again, but if it does happen, where you just completely freeze. You don't want to do that because you have basically given yourself up to the attacker. Instead, what you want to do is become courageous. So you need to practice this in the class. Breathing, controlling your breath, because the center of your nervousness is in your diaphragm. And so to relieve yourself of that nervousness or that fear, learn proper breathing diaphragmically and control that breath. Control the fear and turn that fear into aggression. And you must also learn, especially if you are the passive type or extremely passive, you must learn that if your life is potentially in danger, you must learn to turn on the animal side of you and not be passive. You can speak to an individual that's approaching you, how are you, and keep going. But don't take your eyes completely off of that person. Watch them as they walk past you. Turn your head. There's nothing to be ashamed of turning your head and looking at someone walking past you. All you're doing is looking out for your best interest, which is your safety in your life. So when someone walks past you, watch them, okay? Or if you see someone across the street and you're walking and they all of a sudden cross the street where you are and start walking down, pay close attention to them. You don't have to stare at them like a hawk, but just observe them casually. Be mindful of them the whole time until they get way beyond you. Okay? Now, if peradventure someone attacks you, you drop the kitchen sink on them. And what I mean by that is this. You attack them in every possible vital point on their body. The throat. Palm strike to the nose. Finger gouges to the eyes. Knee strikes to the groin area. And if they bend down, drop an elbow on their spine or the back of their neck. You must learn the vital spots of the body. Stop trying to be a hero. Stop trying to be cocky when you're not cocky. Be confident and realize and train with the mindset that when you're in that self-defense situation, in other words, in the self-defense scenario in that class, wherever you are, home or in a center under a competent instructor, make sure that you have a serious mindset that is for real or as close to reality as possible. Don't joke and play with your instructor. You are there to prepare yourself for the possibility of someone trying to harm you or even take your life in the street. It's not casual. It's not cavalier. You must practice as close to reality as possible if you are to have that same mindset in the street. Because how you train, the mindset that you have in training is the same mindset that's going to kick on in the street situation, because you have trained your mind. You created that mentality of survival in the training situation, and it's going to transfer to the street situation. But if you're cavalier and you're goofy and you're clowning around in class, when the real thing does happen, you're going to be taken by surprise because you have nothing to turn on but fear. So when you're in class, if you don't already know this, you ask the instructor about the vital parts of the body, and it's really common sense. The main vital parts of the human body are the ones that's not protected by a lot of muscle and fat. The head area is always, has always been, always will be a vital target. The eyes are soft, they're tender. Get used to sticking your thumb in someone's eye, your finger in someone's eye. If you have an ink pen, stick it in their eye. If it's a violent encounter, we're talking about violence. We're not talking about someone just pushing you around. We're talking about someone trying to really, really cripple or maim you and maybe even take your life. You can ask questions later. Only you can ascertain what's going on in that instance. So if it's a vicious and violent attack, you got to take it back to them the same way. Be vicious in return. I mean, as I said before, strikes through the throat with a Y of the hand, a chop in the hand if you can get your hand there, gouging the eyes, hands to the ears if their head is exposed and you can clap your hands together over their ears. Keep striking until you can't strike anymore and they fall down. Once they get on the ground, you don't have to try to be macho, men or women. Get your behind out of that area. You don't want to be having a one-on-one fight with an individual. And if you are a woman, you don't want to stand toe-to-toe with a man trying to scrap with him back and forth. You want to leave that situation and you notify the authorities. That's what you do. If you're a guy, you don't have to try to be macho either. If it's another guy, you don't have to prove to him how cocky you are and how strong you are and how skilled you are. If he's attacking you, if he initiates it and you try to leave the situation and he's still on you, you do what you have to do. Be relentless. Once you fail him, in other words, once he falls to the ground and he becomes weakened, get the heck out the situation, go home, and you call the authorities. It's not going to take anything away from you. It doesn't make you a punk. It doesn't make you some sort of wallflower or somebody that's not a man. You call someone and you tell them exactly what happened. Identify what the person is wearing in terms of clothes. Tell them what street it was. Tell them what they look like. And live to maybe fight another day. Hopefully not fight. I hope that the simple and basic karate at my desk explanation of a violent encounter was beneficial. I know it is, but I hope you perceive it as such. As I said, in the future, I'm going to do a video where you'll see me physically going through some techniques against a violent or would-be violent situation or scenario. But right now, this is just to simply get you to think. If you're not already taking martial arts classes, and if you're not already taking a self-defense class, maybe you should consider doing that today, ladies and gentlemen. Learn some basics and or fundamentals of self-defense. Learn distance. Learn staying away from certain areas that are prone to violence, that are prone to robberies. Try to walk in groups, if at all possible. Take some self-defense classes and be serious in those classes. And I mentioned this early on. Take a concealed carry class. Learn how to fire a gun. Choose a gun, purchase a gun, and carry the gun. That's the world we live in today. I can't paint a better picture of it because we live in a very, very unpredictable and a very violent world today. Someone is being accosted even as I'm speaking to you right now. Will that next somebody be you? I hope not. I pray that it's not you. But hopefully it won't be you if you prepare yourself for the possibility of someone attacking you in the street situation. Okay, this is Brother Teacher. I'll talk to you in the next video. In the meantime, stay safe, stay close, and protect yourself. I'm out.